My name is Chris Borowski, Borowski. I'm a spokesperson for Frontex, the European Border and Coast Guard Agency.
Frontex has been kind of growing very rapidly. Can you tell me a little bit about the history of Frontex, how it got started?
Sure. Frontex was set up about 17 years ago by the European Union, by the Commission. It was set up to coordinate support for countries at the external borders. As you know, Europe is made up of countries. The EU is, and then there's also the Schengen zone, which is kind of like the border-free zone. So when you travel through it, it's kind of like going from one state to the other in the United States. You don't have to show your passport, you don't have to show any documents, you just cross. But the politicians realized pretty quickly that in order for this to work, you need to set up a system to control what they call the external borders. So the borders outside of this border-free zone. So they set up Frontex to help countries to protect external borders. What does this mean? So over the last 15 years, Frontex has been providing support to countries. So this means taking border guards from one country and bringing them to the other if that country needs support. So, for example, there's pressure on the, let's say, Spanish border. We bring more people, more equipment from other countries. So this was the setup and this kind of kept growing. But around 2015 and 2016, when you saw this massive migrant wave coming through Greece, and even before that, had a lot of people coming from Libya to Italy, the politicians decided that this Frontex needs to be stronger. So they've upgraded Frontex to become the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, and it was then able to more quickly react to a situation at the borders. So and then a couple more years later, it expanded again, and what happened is they set up something called the Standing Corps, and this is kind of what we're trying to bring about right now. It is the first time that a European agency has, or even the EU has, a uniformed service. So it's the first time that there's officials working for Frontex and not Germany and being borrowed to Frontex. So this is growing. Our budget is growing. We have a lot more responsibilities. We are dealing with cross-border crime. We're becoming kind of like the border agency for the entire EU. Within the EU, countries are still responsible for their own borders, but with this whole knowledge that the weakest point at the external border is the weakest point for everybody, and people will exploit this. The politicians decided that Frontex needs to be expanded, and it really has to become a kind of international partner for all these countries. And so now, in order to protect the borders, you have the national border control and Coast Guard, but there's also Frontex to support this.
Do Frontex agents have arrest powers like law enforcement in these countries?
This is certainly an issue. We have what they call executive powers. So this means that a Frontex border guard can carry weapons, and the Frontex border guard can check passports, can decide whether a person can cross into a specific country or not. But Frontex, for example, cannot launch operations by itself. It still has to do it with individual countries. So there's this weird balance. In the EU, countries are very jealous about their powers and sovereignty. So they feel that yes, Frontex can support, but Frontex cannot be there to kind of start operations on its own or bring people on its own. So there's this balance of partnership. So even now, we try to work so that there's with Frontex officers, there's always a national border guard or policeman or to assist. So there's this kind of a cooperation, and they are the ones usually who conduct the arrests.
Fascinating. Can you describe a little bit about the growth of Frontex and how your budget has grown, say, since, like 2014?
Well, when the agency started, if I remember correctly, the budget was around 20-30 million, and now we're talking about 400 million euros.
It's even more than that. The last budget I saw was like a multi-year budget, but it comes out to about 800
exactly.
billion.
Exactly. A multi-year budget. And it through 2027, it will average around, if I remember correctly, around 800 million per year. Now you have to keep this in mind that we're talking about a growing agency, a growing number of officers. the idea is also for Frontex to have its own equipment. I didn't mention this before, but Frontex has relied on equipment from national authorities. So most of the ships that we use, airplanes, they come from specific countries. They let us borrow these planes, but then they go back. And we want to now be able to have our own equipment. It gets complicated. I mean, we are now using specific airplane services to have surveillance from the air. So this comes out of our own budget, and we are paying for this. But it gets more complicated with ships, for example. It's really difficult for an agency to have its own ship. So that's be an issue down the line. But so this budget is for more people, for basically setting up this whole European border guard service, and also to have the logistics behind it and do the training, all the other things. But it is quite a big jump from what we saw before. When I joined Frontex in 2015, right at the kind of the start of the migratory situation, at that time there was 300 people working for Frontex. Right now we have around 1,500. So, massive increase, 5 times as many over the last 6 years.
Now, I saw a video that was put out about Frontex that said you'll soon have up to 9,000 employees. Is that correct?
No, it's complicated, and what we have right now, we have 1,500 people working for Frontex. But what I think you mentioned is the number of standing corps officers, and that will be 10,000 people by 2027. This is a little misleading because the standing corps is made up of several categories of officers. One is Frontex officers, so people working for Frontex. Second category is people working for Frontex but are being borrowed from national authorities for more than 2 years. So they're kind of, let's say, a little hybrid. They're working for Frontex for a long period, but they will go back to their home country. And then there's a third category, which is kind of what we relied on over the last several years, which is officers coming to Frontex for a month or 2 or 3 and going to an operation, let's say in Greece or Bulgaria, to one of the borders, but then going back. So they're borrowed for short term. This whole group, all of them, there will be 10,000 of these people working by 2027.
So I don't know how familiar you are with the U.S. Border Patrol and U.S. Customs and Border Protection, but their mission includes not only patrolling the borders, picking up people that are irregular migrants and drug runners and smugglers and things like that, but also managing ports of entry and doing, typical immigration related. You go to the airport and you present your passport at immigration, and you stamp your passport and that sort of thing. That's all under U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Mm-hmm. Border Patrol itself is pretty much just along the frontiers of the United States, patrolling for illegal crossings and things like that. Mm-hmm. Would that be closer to what Frontex does?
It's, as everything with the European Union, it's quite complicated. Yes, we are supporting countries with patrols and dealing with cross-border crime, people smuggling, drugs, guns, etc. Absolutely, we're there working side by side with national authorities. But we're also there to help with registration, fingerprinting, getting information about criminal gangs that are involved in people smuggling, etc. And there's a lot we do training, and then we also have kind of the Coast Guard part. So we do have ships that are out there and crews that are patrolling the waters. It's a weird thing because in the States you do have a federal authority, and it's responsible for border control and registration and all these kind of things. Here, each country is responsible for its own borders, mm-hmm. and they are the ones who decide who can come in and into their country, but we're there to support them. So, and in any operation that we do that we're taking part of, the national authorities have the strategic command. They are the ones who decide where the people are placed, where the patrol cars are going, where the ships are. So it's always this weird hybrid thing in the EU where there's this movement to kind of to have a more, let's say, federal approach. So there is the country that deals with the, but because you have to keep in mind, let's assume, for example, that you have a bunch of people coming from Canada to, I don't know, Minnesota or something like this. In the States, you have a national authorities who will come in and will deal with the situation. It's not Minnesota, let's say, as an example. Here, if there's people coming from Greece, Greece is the one that deals with the people, and you will see this on the island when you get there. But Frontex comes in and supports countries that need additional help. So, we have these quite small islands in Greece. And when I was there in 2015, 2016, you saw thousands of people coming in, and Greece was just not able to handle this number of people. So the whole idea behind Frontex is to bring additional support. In the past, this meant bringing people from, let's say, Germany or Italy or elsewhere to come in and help Greece. Now we're moving to a place where we'll still do this, but then we'll also have European officers who will come and support Greece, for example. And the idea is this kind of what they call European solidarity, is to allow countries to deal with their own borders, but when necessary, Europe will come in and will help them. And you're seeing this right now, for example, in Lithuania. Over the last few weeks, you've seen Belarus and the President Lukashenko from Belarus, the dictator, basically telling people that because of various issues, he will just send a lot of people to cross into Lithuania illegally. Now, Lithuania is a pretty small country, so it's having problems just reacting to this. As a matter of fact, over the weekend, they just announced a state of emergency to be able to react to this more quickly. But at the same time, they came to Frontex and asked for more help, and we are bringing more officers and equipment to the Lithuanian border to help them protect their borders. Now, so this is exactly kind of perfect example of how Frontex works.
So right now, one of the hotspots is Lithuania and Belarus. In years past, I have done some reporting on how individual EU member states have kind of gotten fed up with the flows of migrants through their countries and have started setting up fences and stuff within the EU, like between Slovenia and Slovakia and stuff like that. Is there still any of that happening? And if so, does Frontex assist those people, or do they only focus on the external borders?
Yes, the answer to the second question is yes. We are, and this is just part of our what they call mandate. The way it's set up, Frontex can only deal with external borders, so the borders outside of the EU, or the borders with the outside of the EU. We don't deal with the internal borders. But I think that most of the things that you're mentioning were really happening in 2015 and 2016, when there was this massive flow of people coming from Turkey to Greece, leaving Greece to go through the Western Balkans and coming back in the EU through Hungary or through Croatia, Slovenia. So yes, I mean there were certainly countries that were trying to deal with this massive flow of people coming through their borders. I think that there's less so of that now. Okay. And the most recent challenge was really COVID and how to deal with COVID on the internal borders too, because countries need to protect the health of their own citizens, and sometimes they close their own borders, and the whole setups. It's as if, I don't know, New York or Washington State closed their borders and did not allow anybody.
We saw some of that,
and I think there was something a little bit like this, but here it was massive, and again, this is one of these weird challenges that popped up that people were not thinking about. Yeah. But Frontex is there, and we're there to help at the external borders. And we, but it's not just emergencies. Of course, I mean, this is one of the key things. But it's also just for example, Spain needs a lot more support at their borders in the summer because they have a lot of people coming from Africa through the ferries, and so we have a special operation just over the summer. So we bring people to check passports there. There's some talk about Frontex officers coming to Gibraltar in the coming months because after Brexit, Gibraltar becomes kind of an external outside of the EU. But there's a massive flow of people coming in from Spain and leaving Spain. A lot of people who work there. So this is kind of also Frontex comes in. These kind of special cases and support and when the workload grows at the borders.
We hear a lot about the migrants coming out of Libya and taking the boats across to Lampedusa and Malta and Italy. Are you seeing anything like that? Just the rafts of people coming out of Morocco, Algeria into Spain?
Well, we have seen the numbers rise quite considerably over the last year or so. I think they more than doubled in on this central Mediterranean route. So basically coming from Libya to Italy or from Morocco to Italy, Algeria, excuse me. But there's the numbers were quite low last year because of COVID.
Right.
And even before that, there was Italy was quite aggressive about preventing flows, but the number have been growing quite considerably this year. So we have a couple, let's say, hotspots, places where there's big numbers. It's the Central Med, so migrants coming to Italy. The Canary Islands have seen quite a massive number of people coming in. And again, it's a similar situation to Greece. You have small islands dealing with big flows of people. So we also provided some support there. And then you have this situation in the Baltics, which is very unusual for EU. For many years, the eastern border, so the border of EU with Belarus and Russia and Ukraine, has been not very active. I mean, it's more active in terms of illegal smuggling of drugs or cigarettes and alcohol. But now you're seeing really large numbers of people. So this is one of the things I noticed working at Frontex. Every year is different, and the migratory situation changes. Some countries become more restrictive with letting people cross their borders, and so you don't. So the smuggling networks, the criminals move. They allow people to go to Libya. If things become complicated in Libya, then they go to Greece, for example, or they go through Spain, which you saw a couple of years ago. So it's every year's is different, and this is again exactly why something like Frontex is needed in Europe, because here each country is responsible for its own borders, but each year countries have faced much different pressures. So a couple of years ago in Spain, it's just a huge number of people. We sent a lot more officers there. Last year it was in the Canary Islands, so we sent people there.
Right now, are you seeing do you attribute, I know we're seeing an upswing in the number of people coming across, but because COVID was sort of stopped it for a time, what we are seeing in the Western Hemisphere is that there was a glut of people who left the countries of origin, went to sort of third-party countries like Chile and Ecuador and stuff, and hung out, got jobs, survived just fine. And now that there's a new president of the United States and that things are loosening up there, they say, okay, now's my chance, and they're all heading. So there's this big wave of people coming, partially due to COVID, partially due to the political situation. Do you think that Europe is seeing a spike now because COVID depressed levels for a year?
Well, last year was the lowest year since 2013. And certainly COVID was the main reason for that. Our analysts before last year were expecting 2022 to kind of to start rising again after several years of low numbers. But COVID changed things. Countries put in all kinds of restrictions, and but yes, I mean this year we are seeing a rebound. Not on every route, but certainly in a lot of places we are. I mean. Certainly, like I said, people arriving in Italy, that number has been increasing. Spain, and less so in Greece. Greece is still quite low considering the situation. So,
does Frontex have like an intel section that does, kind of sends people to Libya, sends people to Morocco, to try to see what's coming so that you can plan?
No, I mean, we do have what we call liaison officers, but they're individual people working within specific countries, gathering information there. But we don't have, this is again, issue with our regulation, the document that set up Frontex. We do not have investigative powers. We can't go out and look for this information. But we are relying on interviews with people coming to this side. So we have we have what we call debriefing interviews, and we speak to migrants about what's going on and kind of try to get some information that way. We have border surveillance. We have planes and drones flying in the central Mediterranean and in the Mediterranean to really get a feeling of what's going on. So we rely on this kind of information, but we can't go out and actively look for information outside. And the other thing is, in order for us to really have operational presence, so have people, have officers and equipment, we have to have agreements. The EU has to have an agreement with countries outside of the EU. This is something new. Frontex is now able to have operations outside of the EU. So we have people in Albania, we have people in Serbia. We don't have any operations in Africa. It's mostly Western Balkans right now. So that gives us a little more knowledge of what's going on, and we then also support those countries we're dealing with flows of migrants and criminal activity in there. But but we don't have the power to do a lot of investigation.
Okay. So last question. Does Frontex do anything in regards to humanitarian aid or medical assistance or COVID testing or anything like that for people that are, irregular migrants that are coming into these countries?
Well, this is certainly crucial for Frontex to respect the human rights of the people that are coming in. Finding people who are vulnerable and alerting the national authorities. But in the end, it is the national authorities that deal with that aspect. We don't have that power. Again, we can, once we find somebody who needs support, we hand them over to the national authorities and ask them to deal with it. We also, for example, don't have the power to decide who has the right to international protection for an asylum. That's also in the hands of national authorities. So again, this is the European thing. Frontex supports, but in the end, these kind of decisions are in the hands of national authorities.
Why did they headquarter Frontex in Poland?
Well, I think at the time, which was, like I said, 16, 17 years ago, they felt perhaps that there would be some, when Poland and some Eastern European countries were joining, they thought maybe that there would be a new flow of people through Poland. There's also kind of a tradition where, individual countries have their own agencies, and Frontex and Warsaw, Poland just joined the EU when Frontex was being established. So, and they applied to be the headquarters of Frontex, and this is where it is. I mean, but keep in mind that we do have, and this is the thing also with this transformation to the standing core. We have more and more people out in the field, and very soon we'll have more people in the field than we have at the headquarters. So we have, and we will have bases, or we have offices in places like Greece or Italy or Spain. So we're out there, but the headquarters are still here in Warsaw.